Hi, I'm Mark, this is Mark's Tech Vlogs on YouTube, and today I'm going to bring you guys a review of the Switchbot S10 floor cleaning robot. Now, if you've been on this channel for a while, you'll know I've previously tried Switchbot's K10 Plus and their K10 Plus Pro robot vacuum cleaners. And I've really wanted to get my hands on the S10 for a while now. And so when Switchbot offered to send one, I said yes. Now, while Switchbot have sent this to me, which means I haven't paid for it, I always say to companies I will make honest reviews. And so that's what you guys are going to get in this video. However, I like to be transparent when companies send me stuff and make sure you know that, because I know some people do care about that. And this isn't just a robot vacuum cleaner with a mopping function. That mop is able to be retracted up inside the hoover so it doesn't make your carpets wet. It can go and empty its own water and refill its water. It can also empty its own dust and then dry the mop. Alongside that, it also cleans that mop pad as well, so it basically requires very little maintenance when you're using it. And as you'd expect with all of those features, the price is pretty high, and at full price it's £1,100. However, I've seen it go as low as just under £700. There's always deals on the Switchbot website and on Amazon, and I've got a voucher code for the Switchbot website, so I'll put links to all of those below. Now, I wanted to do a really thorough review and also tell you about all the things you're going to need to know if you own one of these, so extras you have to buy throughout the year and things like that. So I will put some chapters below as well, because this is going to be a long video. But let's kick off with design. And there's basically three parts to talk about when it comes to design. You've got the water dock, you've got the charging and emptying station, and you've got the vacuum itself. And all three are basically white with rounded edges and look pretty modern. The vacuum and the charging station also have some silver accents on them. If we dive into the vacuum a bit more, you can see that it is largely white and round with some accents on it, but also some black areas on it, which is where sensors are, and also the lights on the front. This helps it navigate in darker situations. All in all, it's a pretty modern looking vacuum cleaner. It's also pretty heavy, although it does complain if you pick it up. The dock with the empty station is surprisingly slim and actually only a little bit taller than the K10 Plus one. That's impressive considering it's got a blower in there to dry the mop as well. And then of course you've got the water refill station, which is a bit of a white block as well. On the top of that water station you've got a space where you can put in some floor cleaner, and also a side where there's a filter as well. So let's get into the spec. So firstly, this device, as I've said, is both a vacuum and a mop. The vacuum side of things has a 6500 PA power for suction. This makes it pretty powerful. You can also adjust the suction power in the app, so you don't always have to have it on full. Now that mop is self-cleaning and also retractable. That means this vacuum can detect when there's a carpet and lift the mop up inside so it doesn't make your carpet wet. This is pretty clever, and generally when I've been trying to test it, pretty accurate, although the edges of carpets do get slightly wet just as it's retracting up. It's also able to refill its own water and also drain its own dirty water via the water dock. And then when it comes to the dust that it sucks up, it can go and empty that at its main dock and charging station. That charging station takes a bag, and Switchbot say that will last for up to 90 days between changes. It's also a station where it will dry the mop using 50 degrees hot air. This generally lasts about 4 hours after it's on a vacuum cycle, but you can adjust that in the app. The base of a vacuum has an anti-tangle rubber brush, and then of course it's got that mop that we talked about. It also has one single brush and not one either side. This doesn't seem to stop it being effective, and it's really good at just sweeping everything up. In terms of navigation and not bumping into things, it has LiDAR navigation built in and also AI obstacle avoidance. This AI even takes an educated guess at the obstacles it comes across and labels them on the map. And actually it correctly recognises things like the cat toys and just labels them as toys. And the same for bathroom scales. There are of course a few mistakes which you'd expect from AI. It's also compatible with some third-party services as well, including Alexa and Google Home. Now those aren't things I use, so I haven't tested those. It's also just gained by a firmware update onboard Matter support. That means unlike most of other Switchbot's products, it can actually connect to Matter directly without the use of an extra hub. This is great for Apple Home users, and it means it does now appear in my Apple Home app. Now officially robot vacuum support hasn't come to Apple Home yet, so it doesn't really do anything there. This is however expected soon in a future iOS update. If that's changed, I'll let you know below. If you don't want to wait for that, then you can gain on-off functionality in the Apple Home app if you add it to one of Switchbot's hubs. To do that, you just go into the hub you've got, whether that's a Hub 2 or a Hub Mini with Matter support, and add it in the Matter section. If you've already got that hub set up in Apple Home, the device will appear automatically. Personally, I haven't done that because I'll wait for that proper Matter support in Apple Home. Now, the other thing to know is that when it comes to buying spares, you are going to need to bear in mind these costs. So if you need to get a 4-pack of 150ml cleaning solution bottles, that will set you back £33. Switchbot recommend that you do use their own floor cleaner. If you need a pack full of all the things you're going to need to run this vacuum for a year, then you can get that from a Switchbot site for £100. That includes things like spare mops, brushes, bags, and all sorts of extra things. You can see all of those things on the screen right now. Now that does sound like quite a lot, but actually at the time of recording there's a 15% voucher off all of those things. That brings the accessory pack down to about £85 and a floor cleaner just under £30. I'll link both of those below as well. Now Switchbot in the box do give you a spare brush, a couple of spare bags, some brushes to clean the device with, and some cleaning solution. And so I reckon you're probably going to be good for the first kind of 9 months of owning this anyway. Personally, I do think they should up some of the stuff in there so it lasts you a full year before you have to buy anything else. And of course, it's down to how much you want to maintain your vacuum, whether you do want to religiously change these every time Switchbot recommend. Alongside that, in the box, you also get a variety of plumbing accessories. These are designed to help make the water dock as compatible as possible. If, however, you don't want to plumb it into your mains, Switchbot do sell for £80 an external water dock pack that goes on top of the water dock. This basically gives you 2 tanks you manually have to refill and empty. One for clean water and one with the dirty water. The vacuum will still go and empty and refill itself, but of course you're going to have to remember to top that up. It doesn't just come from your mains water and into your mains drainage. So let's get into setup. Now, especially if you're going to plumb this in, setup does require a little bit of work. And I actually did a full video on how I set this up, which I'll link below. But essentially, once you've removed all of the packaging from the vacuum and the 2 docks, you then want to turn the vacuum over and stick on the brush. This just pushes on. At this point, you want to find where you're going to put your main dock and plug it in. You'll then manually dock the vacuum to it. Then you want to jump into Switchbot app, hit plus and find the S10. That will talk you through the pairing and setup process. It will then also give you some instructions for plumbing in that water dock. Now personally, I recommend using the paper instructions just because they're a bit easier to follow if you are messing around with water. The main key with plumbing it in is planning. And so before you even start unscrewing pipes and cutting off water, you're going to want to work out exactly where it's going to fit and check the accessories Switchbot include are going to work for you. Now I think in most situations they are going to, and actually I initially plumbed this in my bathroom and then plumbed it in my kitchen instead. For both of those setups, all of the things I needed had come with the device. Now the reason I moved it to my kitchen is I decided I would cut my kickboard and have it kind of wedged between 2 parts of kickboard under my kitchen sink unit. This basically hides away the entire dock. To make sure it couldn't slip backwards, I put a wooden board behind it to hold it in place. Personally, if you don't mind cutting your kickboards, I think this is the best way of doing it because it just hides it out of the way. At which point the only thing Switchbot don't include that you need is a saw. At this point, via the Switchbot app, you're going to want to send the robot off to do a quick map of your house. It will go around learning a different space and you'll see that map build up in the app. You'll then want to mark on the map where the water dock is. The vacuum will then come to that dock and try and dock onto it just to make sure it can get water. Now that dock doesn't require power, it pretty much gets all of its power straight from the vacuum, although I think there is a battery in it somewhere because you do press a button and pair it. Now because the pipes attached to that water dock are quite long, I found that it took a few attempts to actually get water out of it the first time round. I think that's because water had to travel all the way down the pipe. Since then when I've been using it, it's been getting water every time with no problem. I think probably it just needs some kind of first time mode where it'll just suck a bit harder. All in all, it's not the easiest product to set up, but once you're done, you're done. And of course, trickiest bit is plumbing it in. If you don't want to do that, you can get that separate water dock. So let's talk about using this. And I've been using this for about a month, and this is one of the coolest pieces of tech I've ever used. And that's because that vacuum and mop work incredibly well, and there's something quite mesmerizing about watching it go and fill itself up and empty itself and get water and all of that. What I've basically done for the last month when I haven't been testing it is I've had it set to vacuum and mop a few times a week. And each time it comes out of a dock, it goes off, it gets some water, it vacuums and mops and does exactly what it should. And at the end of the process, it empties its dirty water and then it goes back to its main base station, empties the dust and dries the mop. And as you can see from the images, considering the mop's been used about 5 times a week for a month, it looks pretty clean. There's also been some times where I've used the app to do a specific area clean. That's when I've made a particular mess and I've just wanted to clean up that area. And each time it's done a good job, and you can set it to do 2 passes if you've made a massive mess. The biggest test I gave for this was when my Christmas tree arrived, and as I unwrapped it and removed the net, it dropped a ton of pines on the floor. It also got a bit of mud there from the pot as well. Via the Switchbot app, I told this vacuum to clean that area, and it did. And considering most vacuums struggle with pine needles, it absolutely smashed it. And it got rid of all of the mud and all of the pine needles in 2 passes. And you can see its progress in the app, and that map shows you where it's been and also marks on the docks and the different things it's come across that are interferences. So it knows where my bathroom scales are, it knows where the coffee table is, it knows where the cats have left their toys. It also recognises carpets and will raise that mop, although like I said, it will get the edge slightly damp. Now pretty much all of my downstairs is hard floor, so I've only really tested this with rugs. And it does struggle to recognise my doormat, which is a pretty flat rubber one. I've just marked that as a no mop area on the map because otherwise it drags it around. The other thing to say is that much like every robot vacuum I've used, it struggles with shaggy rugs. It'll mount it, it'll try and get off of it, and it'll declare itself stuck and I'll have to go and rescue it. This is pretty much what I expected. And really, when you're using it, you just want to make sure you pick up any loose things off the floor so it can't get into trouble. But in using this vacuum and mop really does make the house look cleaner. The K10 Plus Pro was doing a great job of keeping everything hoovered, but the extra mopping thing actually does make an improvement. This is especially true if, like me, you've got cats who litter out the litter box all the time, because you do need that cleaning up daily. I've also noticed that it's really good at avoiding obstacles, and it doesn't just bump into them and adjust itself, but it can actively avoid them. But this does lead on to talk about the downsides. And generally it's really difficult to name downsides without being picky, but there are 4 things I want to make you aware of. And the first follows on from object avoidance. And the kind of joke thing with reviewers and vacuum cleaners is, will it dodge a poo? And the answer is no. So if you want to skip a gross picture, you might want to skip on to about 20 seconds from now. And I'm going to apologise for this photo, but it does illustrate things really well. Basically, there was an incident where one of the cats managed to kick their poo out of the litter box. I hadn't noticed, the vacuum went off and did its thing, and then at some point declared itself stuck. I went to see what was going on and noticed this. And this picture is really interesting because you can see that it's obviously bumped into the poo at some point and smeared it. And the actual bottom of the vacuum did need a bit of a clean. But the actual mop was clean. And so actually it's a really good illustration to say that the self-cleaning mop actually self-cleans itself as it's going around. That means even though it got itself into a bit of trouble, I didn't have poo smeared all over the floor. Downside number 2, although the first one should have been number 2, is that the cost of maintaining it does cost about £85 a year. And that's not too much, but it's probably more than your average vacuum with some filters, and just something to bear in mind. But personally, I think for the payoff of having something completely automated, it is worth it. The third thing is that because that mop is under the vacuum rather than right at the edges like a lot of others, it doesn't quite mop into corners. Now it still gets pretty close, and so I haven't really got anything to complain about with that, but it's just something worth being aware of. And it's kind of a trade-off for this mop that lifts up inside. And then fourthly, like every single vacuum, it does struggle with getting stuck on things. So if a cat has left a toy around, it will try and suck it up and get stuck. It can't do a shaggy rug. And all the things you do find with vacuum cleaners. But let's be honest, if you were using a vacuum cleaner yourself, it would struggle with those things as well. My manual vacuum tries to suck up a shaggy rug. All in all though, what is my verdict on the S10? And in using this for a month, I have become that sad person who talks about their vacuum to their friends. And that's because I have been blown away by this. It does a fantastic job of cleaning, and its self-emptying and self-cleaning is quite mesmerising to watch. Switchbot are also adding other devices like humidifiers and dehumidifiers that this vacuum can empty and refill. And it's really interesting to see how Switchbot are really automating stuff around your home, especially things like humidifiers and dehumidifiers, which are quite easy to forget to empty or refill. To automate that is really clever, and I'm looking forward to trying those in the future. But going back to the S10 as a vacuum and mop, it's got powerful suction. It's got accurate object avoidance and pretty much completely maintains itself. And one question I think I have to ask, and probably you're asking when a company sends me something, is would I pay for this myself? And if I'm honest, at full price, I wouldn't. And I think that's just because justifying $1,100 on a vacuum is just a bit crazy. But actually, when it's been down to £700, I'd have certainly been tempted. And actually, after using it, I would certainly pay that for it. If you guys have got any questions about this, stick them below and I'll answer those. This is something I'm going to use for the long term, so as I continue using it, if I've got any issues, I'll make sure I note them in the comments and I will pin those as well. If you do want to pick one up, I'll put links below to Switchbot and Amazon's website, plus some links to the accessories I've talked about as well. All of those links will go to Switchbot or Amazon's website in your own country, and they are affiliate links. That means if you make a purchase with one of them, I will get a very small cut of what you spend, and that just helps this channel out. This isn't my full-time job, I don't get paid for these reviews, and I never take sponsorship, so if you use one of those links, thank you very much. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again soon.